This is a true encounter and one of the creepier experiences I've had, and trust me, I've had lots. I stumbled across this recently, so I thought I'd share my story here and see if anyone has had similar experiences anywhere in the US. Back in the summer of 2017, my girlfriend and I were driving from Evanston, Illinois to spend the weekend at her parents' lakefront cottage in the Petoskey, Michigan, a popular destination for summer retreats. This drive for us was around 6 hours long and involved taking the highway north through the midwestern half of Michigan. A lot of this path goes through some fairly remote areas. Eventually, we found we had been driving in the same single lane highway road through some dense woods for what seemed like the last 45 minutes. I recall our navigation showing we were somewhere in the Huron Manistee National Forest. Also, when I say dense, I mean that the tree canopy formed almost a tunnel around the fairly narrow road, which made it seem significantly darker than it actually was outside. Luckily, the summer days in Michigan are long. We still had a couple hours of daylight left. While driving, I noticed some older, dilapidated constructions in the woods to the right. It looked like remains of old sheds or storage buildings. This is a good time to mention that I'm a bit of a treasure hunter. I collect historical relics and old coins, and these ruins seem like a great place to dig up some old artifacts that may have been buried for years. Also, this stretch of road was deserted, so it was unlikely others had explored this place first. Luckily, I had my metal detector with me in the car, as I had planned to use it on the beach at Petoskey. I also had one of those children's shovels made of neon plastic and a wooden handle for digging in the sand, and although it's not ideal for soil, it would do. I told my girlfriend I wanted to stop for a bit and pulled over on the shoulder, and she said okay, but she would stay back and continue napping. The nearest ruins were small, but not too far from the road itself. I figured the current highway must have originally been a backwoods road that the inhabitants could have used back in the day. However, I noticed a large structure, a deep into the forest, and decided to check it out, as larger buildings that could have been people's homes and such have a higher chance of yielding a cool find. I made my way over and could see it was made of brick. The window holes were still clearly defined with dirty broken glass around the edges. It looked I looked through one window and could see the building through half collapsed had a floor that looked somewhat intact, but towards the road, my car was just barely within my range of vision. Since it was dark around the ruins, I recall leaving my shovel outside as I didn't need it for the hard floor, and used my free hand to hold my phone as a flashlight to help spot anything shiny. I snooped around the corner and started sweeping with the metal detector within the building walls. The roof was collapsed for half an hour or so when I started to hear movement around me, like crunching twigs and brushes rustling. I dismissed this as a small animal at first, but I kept hearing it. Also, almost as if it was following my movement around the building from the bushes on the perimeter. At this point, the hairs on my back and my neck stood up. I got the feeling I was being watched, like some animal was stalking me. I decided to turn back. I started hollering and making loud noises in hopes of scaring off whatever could be there, and cautiously made my way over to where I left my shovel. It was gone, and I'm certain I couldn't have misplaced it. It was because it was neon orange and I had left it in the middle of a pretty open area, so there's no way I would have not just seen it. At this point, it spooked me enough to just say, fuck it, and booked it to my car. Hopping back in the driver's seat, I could see my girlfriend was awake and her eyes were wide. She told me just a few minutes ago, while I was gone, she saw a child emerge from the forest and just look at her from several feet down the edge of the road. She described it as a boy, maybe 7 or 8, with a dirty face and ragged clothes. She told me she was worried the boy was lost or left behind, but the way he looked at her made her uneasy. Said he didn't look afraid or curious, but just looked at her with a gaze that seemed off for a lost child. She told me she still wanted to notify the police, but wasn't comfortable leaving the car or calling out to the kid, who by now have disappeared. I hadn't yet told her about my experience by the ruins, but at this point my heart was beating, and I just felt very uneasy about the whole thing. As I looked at the non-emergency number for the nearest sheriff's office on my phone, my girlfriend screamed my name. I looked up, and there was a boy similar to the one she described, just looking directly at us from the edge of the woods, a few feet from the passenger door. I was alarmed to see another similar boy right outside the back window, peering into the back seat. At this point, I didn't care anymore. I just turned the car on and accelerated the fuck out of there. After a few seconds of driving, I looked in my rearview mirror and the boys disappeared into the forest as fast as they had come. I sped over the limit for God who knows how long until we were clear out of those woods. We ended up still calling the sheriff's office, who mentioned there have been similar sightings of children along that road, but other drivers. Though I never got a good look, I agreed with my girlfriend that something was off about those kids and that their behavior didn't match that of lost children. Maybe they lived in a nearby secluded property with their parents and were just playing in the woods and trying to steal our shit. I had also heard of feral children, which could explain the dirty faces and raggedy clothes. Later at the college, I googled similar paranormal sightings. Apparently, melonheads, a band of feral children with enlarged heads, had been spotted in the forest of Michigan, just a couple of hours away from where we had been. They could have been also black-eyed kids. Upon asking my girlfriend this, she said she was not sure that boy was staring at her but didn't have black eyes, and she would have noticed. However, his mannerisms, as she described them, seemed very similar to the stories I read about BEK. So it's possibility. If anyone has insight into this or similar experiences, I'd love to hear them. The experience creeps me out to this day, and we have ended up taking a different route on the way back from Petoskey just to avoid driving through that forest again.